Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and I'd like to get us started with a couple of, with the state of the channel. First of all, one person asked me a legitimate question, which is, when's your regular streaming time? Haven't the foggiest. It's just sort of feeling it out right now. I will certainly do a post on the channel, but it's going to be based entirely off analytics. As far as when I'm working on channel stuff, all day, every day. Fun fact about your old pal Jake: if I had a genie's wish, I would wish to make my living talking about progressive politics and how to organize folks to make the world a better place. That would be my wish, to make a living doing that. And let me tell you, in order to monetize this channel, and this show is just under a month old, to monetize this channel requires 4,000 hours of public watch time, which we passed today. Thank you very much. And it requires 1,000 subscribers to begin monetizing. Folks, we are 14 away. 14 away from 1,000 subscribers. I can't believe it. I am honored. Thank you. Let's get it there. Baby, let's get it there. The next Pixel Progressives will come out as a... if you're a fan of those, they're little cartoons I do where we snip up funny moments from progressive shows around the internet and make them into pixel art. There's a few extra gags tossed in as well. That's going to be released as the 1,000 subscribers celebration. Maybe we'll even do something where we watch it together in a live stream. That doesn't necessarily mean this is suddenly a money-making operation. That's simply when it is worth cracking into the book of rules and figuring out how one monetizes a YouTube channel. I come from corporate media. I would prefer not to make my living doing ad-based media again. It's not to say that I think the folks that take advertisements on their shows are wrong or anything like that. It's just structure of it feels off to me. So, wrapping up the show notes part, we'll get to the good stuff, I promise. I just wanted to say thank you. This is a new channel, and we are still working out what our regular flow is going to be, but that also means that if you are an early subscriber, first of all, you are my hero. Second of all, let me know. When would you want to see it? What kind of, when do you like seeing live streams? When do you like seeing VOD? It's very formative, or rather, your input, particularly in these early days, is going to be very formative for what my future career looks like, podcasting on the internet. It's a lovely segue into what we can do to make the world better, because it's 2023. Strategically speaking, this is a good time. If you're just now thinking, I'd like to take some action, now's a great time, because 2024 is going to be the campaign year. It's a presidential election year. That's like for politicians, that's like if you're an Olympic athlete. That's when your sport rolls around, which means 2023 is when they are coming up for how they are going to campaign. They are looking at, what do my constituents think? What are the major issues? What should I get done now to impress the people I need to vote for me in 1 year. Nearly every show, there is a link in the description, including this one. There's a link in the description with the House's webpage for finding your representative. Tell them what you want. We did a clip with Sam Cedar. Man, I should just have that in the palette ready to go always. But he did a wonderful breakdown of how uncommon it is for your representative to hear from you. It's extraordinarily uncommon. It's a situation where 4 or 5 calls or emails constitutes a big deal to them, which means you have way more power than you probably thought you did to affect political discourse. So something as simple as getting on your representative's back about getting big money out of politics can at least make them talk about it in interviews, can make them bring it up as issues, can get the ball rolling. So if you want to know what you can do, basically, the go-to move, if you were a Marine, this would be your M16, your standard political tool. Well, that's going to be contacting your representative. Here's a fun fact. The right, culturally, is used to doing this. Like, all the time. You remember the satanic panic? What that was? Bunch of moms with nothing to do that were easily duped by their local media. Maybe not their fault, different times, less ability to fact check, but nonetheless, they got stirred up and were convinced that Dungeons and Dragons was going to make their children Satanists. There was a massive campaign, a write-in campaign, to local news agencies and to their representatives trying to deal with it. It's stuck culturally because that particular slice of America is used to making their voice heard. It's just normal for them. If you're a progressive, take a note from that. That power can be used for good, and I'd like us, as a group, to start effing using it. Make your voice heard. Use that link in the description. I'm going to give you all kinds of things you might want to talk to them about today. 1 or 2 sentences will do just fine. You don't have to be Shakespeare. You just tell them, I care about this or that. Let's have a look. Oh, let's hope I don't blow out the speakers. And all right, let's have a look at a little fella who's made appearances here before, called Beau of the Fifth Column. He talks about where GOP policy comes from and makes an excellent point. With no further ado, this is a charming gentleman with a beard and a shed.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Beau again. So today we're going to talk about how policymaking within the Republican Party actually occurs. Because I had a question, and I've touched on this subject before this year, but this was a little bit more specific. It asked why I was even talking about Trump's campaign promises when I'm standing here saying constantly that he's weakened, it's unlikely he's going to hold office again. And yeah, that might seem contradictory, but we have to look at what the Republican Party is right now and how it gets the rhetoric and policy ideas that that shape it. A lot of it still comes from Trump.
There it is.
Right now you have multiple factions within the Republican Party. To keep it simple right now, we're just going to talk about those who are in states where they actually have to run for office, and those that are in deep red areas. Those that
Okay. Oh, I always hate
are
pausing in
in
an
deep
awkward moment. Okay. Side note. When he's going to go into this dynamic, I'd like you to think about one extra thing. Part of this channel is to cheerlead great progressive content such as this. Beau, the fifth column, just about never misses. He's something else. But another thing is to take what they're talking about and tell you about how we can take action, how we can change the course of the river, if only enough, just enough to survive it. Pay attention to the dynamics he's talking about with Republicans and think about how that may affect you. What's its opposite look like? Can the things that Republicans do effectively, whether we agree with their goals or not, can they be adopted or adapted to use? Did I just do a Trump? I hope not. If they can be adapted for use in, decent human beings' plans.
red areas, they are very supported on their social media, and we have talked about it on the channel. The Republican Party has fallen into this trap where they believe their most vocal supporters are reflective of the voters. They should have learned this after 3 failed elections, but they haven't. They still think that vocal minority on social media cheering on the most extreme rhetoric is representative of the whole. Trump controls that energized base. That vocal minority, they are Trump's people. They love him.
Okay. Fun fact about progressives. Progressives make up about 8% of the voting population. That's, first of all, better than it was significantly. The far right has done a great job of making people woke because there has been no choice for many but to wake up to what goes on in the U.S. However, 8% ain't exactly a minority. Another fun fact about progressives. Their policies, as in the things they are advocating to actually be done in government, when you take off all the spin people put on it, and you just put their policies down on a sheet of paper and ask somebody, do you agree with this? Check yes or no. They have, on average, 60 to 70% support amongst the voting populace. Think about that. It is the opposite with MAGA folks. It is difficult to even pin down what their policies are. But MAGA folks definitely, the policies they can agree on to say this is a MAGA policy, definitely don't have 60 to 70% support. They barely have the support of all MAGA folks. So, there is a clear problem here. There is a gap, a massive gap, between the number of people that consider themselves progressives, this is according to Ipsos polls, and the people that actually want progressive things done, i.e., people that should be considering themselves progressives. So what do we use right here with what he's talking about? He is talking about the vocal base of a political party being viewed by the members of that party in Congress as a larger section of the voting populace than they actually are. Okay, we need to take that. We need to use that. That does mean, as gauche as it is, as contrary to the nature of progressives as it is, that does mean being louder online. Not rude, but louder. That means adding your representative on social media, following your representative, seeing what they say, and commenting on it. And it also means contacting them. If you feel bad about being heard, just remember that, 62% gap between the people that consider themselves progressives and the people and the groups that want progressive things done. We simply aren't loud enough. But let's continue with Mr. Beau of the Fifth Column.
So when he comes out and says, well, yeah, we're going to launch military operations into Mexico, him saying it doesn't really matter because he's not going to be in office again. That's incredibly unlikely. So it goes down to them. They hear it. They start talking about it. It shows up in the social media profiles of other candidates. Those in very red areas know that it resonated. So they pick up those policy decisions. Right now, the game of red state Republicans and Republicans in very secure red areas is to try to be the most extreme. That's why you have the governor of South Dakota taking shots at the governor of Florida right now. Even though they're on the same team. They are both far-right Republicans. But being the most extreme, well, that's how you get that social media engagement. And that's how, to their way of thinking, you win elections, even though it damages those Republicans who aren't in those very safe districts. So, like it or not, Trump is a symbol for the Republican Party. He is still a thought leader. That's why when that fiasco happened up on Capitol Hill, there at the House of Representatives, even though the people who were holding out and blocking McCarthy, even though they were doing that against Trump's endorsement, they threw up a vote for Trump.
True.
To let everybody know they're still on his side. They're still Trump's people because he's a symbol. He's the thought leader. He is that guiding light for the Republican Party. And he will continue to be that until something changes. Until the criminal prosecutions take hold, until he decides of his own free will to leave political life.
Seems unlikely. Let's let him... all right, that's good. By the way, until those criminal prosecutions take hold. We're going to go into it in, I believe, tomorrow's show with the utter lack of federal prosecutions, but we've done a couple segments about this. The federal efforts are going to be led by Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland is old school liberal, like Democrat through and through. In other words, he's weak as hell. He's about as strong as a shot of strawberry schnapps. He's not going to do it. But that's if we're interested in one of the scenarios there, which takes some of the crazy out of the Republican Party, and you might not be Republican, but it sure helps to have opponents that aren't, advocating for full-on fascism. If we're going to make that happen, state charges are the route to go. It also makes Trump unable to get saved by, let's just say, a moron Democrat who would give him a pardon. Sounds crazy, I'm telling you. Don't put anything dumb past traditional Democrats. There is nothing too dumb. There is nothing too incompetent to be too dumb for them to do. So, state charges are a great route. Link in the description. There are 5 states right now which have not filed or have not begun a state investigation into the false elector plot. One of the ways Trump tried to make your vote irrelevant. If you're from one of those states, contact your attorney general. Links in the description.
Republican Party just says we've had enough. He's still very influential, even if he never holds office again. So when it comes to his vows on campaign issues and what he's promising to do, they have to be addressed because they will spread. It will infect his energized base, which will infect the red state Republican base, and over social media, it will infect the red state candidates. And then you run the risk of it actually becoming a Republican Party policy. So as much as we all want to, Trump's not out of the game yet. We can't ignore him.
True.
Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
I mean, that ending of his, I wish I had something like that. I'll never. It's like a warm cup of tea. So it doesn't have to be all bad news. Let's take that and turn it on its head. You can use that same energy, that same technique of being the loud minority in your party to be the cultural leader of your party. The base of lefties ought to be active. And fortunately, we can do that from the comfort of our homes with just a cell phone. It's in your pocket, the ability to change America, to right the course of this ship. You can do it. Just be louder. If you are from a deep blue state, you should not have a centrist Democrat in any position. Let's look at our evil opposites. What happens when you have Greg Abbott running a state and you have a town where the police get 40% of the town's budget? Does that mean you have the world's most competent police force? I bet if a town gives 40% of their budget to their police, the one thing they don't have to worry about is school shootings. The one thing they don't have to worry about is, in fact, let's just say violent crime at all, because those cops are going to be tip-top anyway. This is Uvalde.
I heard him reload. I heard something with a pin. You obviously well know what that sounds like. Not with a pin, I'm sorry, with a clip. I'm assuming he reloaded, but I know he did something with it. I did hear that at one time. I don't know if there was a second.
Yeah, that's potentially an opportunity to do something. I mean, it's not a necessary opportunity. You could have gone in long before then, but that is an opportunity when you could have gone in if you had chosen to. He chose not to. And he acknowledges the criticism. He says, we're going to get scrutinized. I'm expecting that.
Yep.
We're getting scrutinized for why we didn't go in there. Yeah, it is weird that people are doing that. It's weird that they haven't.
Okay, so obviously this is John Idarola. My gosh, this is John Idarola, the Damage Report. If you're not already watching TYT, I don't know how you missed it. It's one of the biggest shows online. They do great coverage by and large. I disagree with them constantly, and that is by design of their network. They have all kinds of opinions, but they are largely opinions from the left. The left is a very big tent, so if you hear something on TYT that you don't necessarily agree with, good. If you agreed with everything that aired on TYT, you'd be contradicting yourself. I love the fact that this network exists for that reason. John Idarola, in particular, is somebody who I think gives great breakdowns, and here he is talking about the Uvalde police, and he is right. Let's listen to the point he is making about what the expectations of police are, especially given what Republican and conservative in general framing has been for what police are supposed to do.
Issue with the fact that you guys just waited outside for hours and hours for the shooter to do literally anything he wants in there. That is weird.
Well, look, children were already shot.
They might say,
out.
I'm sure many of them do say frequently, probably to themselves, their family and friends, it's easy for you to say that. You wouldn't have gone in. And you know what? I probably wouldn't have, because that's terrifying. But you'll notice that my uniform doesn't involve a badge. I know that I wouldn't do something like that, so I haven't risked other people's lives by taking the spot of someone who hopefully will do that. And maybe it seems unfair cosmically for a person's entire career to come down to one decision, but that is very much where we're at. You trained and
So yeah, progressives are have the expectation that police do their jobs. I know it's crazy. And B, trying to make a world where their jobs aren't as hard. On the other side of it, you have the madness of conservatives in the United States who are simultaneously doing everything they can to keep the most dangerous guns, all guns, any guns, on the streets, in people's hands, as few regulations as possible, making the job of police much harder. And making sure that police have unreliable coworkers by making there be no federal database for tracking police misconduct, for making it so that you can get fired for the most reprehensible stuff in one department and then go serve in another department, serve being used very generously there. Go steal from taxpayers in another department by pretending to be a police officer. Everybody in the Uvalde police department of Uvalde was pretending to be a police officer. We found out that they weren't real police when kids were shot in school, and they stood outside and listened to it. Greg Abbott in Deep Red, Texas, did nothing. The Attorney General of Texas did nothing. The public has had to lay into them to get any weak gestures towards progress made, and they still didn't do anything of consequence to prevent this from happening again. The entire consequences that Greg Abbott suffered for this were some awkward questions in a debate which he was allowed to dance around. This is why we need to not feel bad about using the tactics of the right to defeat the right, because otherwise you get Uvalde. Let's let John keep going.
Trained and got all opportunities and were given all this power and all of that. And when it mattered most, you made the wrong decision. And whether it's scary or not, that's the job. And when we're continually told as progressives or whatever, like, you guys want to change the police, you don't understand that a day's gonna come when you need someone with a gun. Well, if you're gonna make that case, then maybe when that day comes, do the right thing with it. You don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to be the person on the wall who civilization relies on. And when civilization relies on them, you stand in the hallway for hours while kids are butchered.
Boom.
Okay, you gotta choose one of those two things. And unfortunately, Pete Arredondo did.
So, John Idarola, I'd like to welcome you officially to the no notes section on WYCD. I got no notes on that particular take. Correct. I don't think we should be putting ourselves in a position where so much is dependent upon heroism. Heroism is not reliable. That is what makes it heroic. It's rare. But if we are in that place, then we have to demand it. Because otherwise the answer is we just let nightmare scenarios play out again and again and again. Should police have to be in a position where a bunch of kids' lives depend on them rushing into a room and getting into a fatal shootout with somebody who's got a machine gun. No. No, they shouldn't. But we're in a situation now where somebody has to in our society. So it's got to be them. And if they're unwilling to do it, can't be police. It's that simple. If they think that's unfair, they ought to advocate for reasonable gun reform. And until I see that happening, I have no sympathy. Well, Trump recently got some bad news. It's the Saturday stream, so we're doing it a little bit more casual. I'm going to go right into it. But yeah, in Georgia, things aren't going so good for Donnie.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, there is an ongoing investigation in Fulton County, Georgia, and that's regarding Trump's call with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger.
Quick background, that's Brian Tyler Cohen and Glenn Kirshner. Glenn Kirshner is a legal expert. Brian Tyler Cohen is a handsome man. And together, they do The Legal Breakdown.
Demanding that he find 11,780 votes that didn't exist. Now, a special grand jury was convened, and that grand jury has now completed its report. So first, why was a special grand jury convened? And second, what comes next now that that report's complete?
I do want to say I am so glad that he's asking that question right off the bat. I really have trouble following the let me put myself in the middle here. I have trouble following the Georgia's rules for how the grand juries work. So I think Glenn Kirshner does a pretty good job of summing it up. But if I stutter a lot coming up, it's because I'm trying to work it out myself. Well, there we go.
Yeah, the good news is this feels like progress. So Georgia has a somewhat unusual dual grand jury system. Usually jurisdictions just have one grand jury. That grand jury issues subpoenas, hears testimony, and votes out indictments. In Georgia, the regular grand jury cannot compel witnesses to testify. The regular grand jury doesn't have subpoena power. So you have to ask the court to convene a special grand jury to exercise the subpoena power to force or compel reluctant witnesses to testify. And boy, did District Attorney Fani Willis have her hands full with lots of reluctant witnesses, Donald Trump's, lackeys and lapdogs who didn't want to testify. So that's why she had to seek to have a judge impanel the special grand jury. And now, as you say, that grand jury has completed its work. It's issued a report and it's been resolved. And now they move on to next steps.
So when are we going to find out who the Fulton County DA was trying to get to compel to testify?
This is going to be very interesting because what I want to hear is folks involved in the fake elector plot. I understand that they're all the focus of the, oh my gosh, what a state we're in. The focus of the Georgia election interference investigation is on the pressure to Raffensperger. The pressure to try to get the, 11,780 votes, that phone call, and the events surrounding it. But I also want to hear about the fake electors, and I really hope to hear that got mentioned in the grand jury.
So there is an open question right now about whether the special grand jury's report will become public. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I think it's really interesting that District Attorney Willis has been sort of persistently sawing the justice wood and defeating Donald Trump loyalists one after another. And this is why she needed the special grand jury, because she subpoenaed Mike Flynn, who desperately didn't want to have to testify before a Georgia state grand jury about the crimes of Donald Trump. So,
pure speculation. Mike Flynn, I think Trump wanted to be his general. He went out of his way to ensure that Mike Flynn did not get in trouble for the real shady dealings he had with Russia. I would suspect that there is more to that story, but every time you hear Mike Flynn's name in the news, your ears ought to perk up.
Of course, he went to court. He tried to avoid testifying. And boy, Fani Willis just beat the pants off him. He appeared and he testified. Rudy Giuliani, same thing. He didn't want to have to testify about Donald Trump's crimes, went to court. Fani Willis beat him and he appeared and testified. And Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, so desperately didn't want to have to testify before the Georgia state grand jury about Donald Trump's crimes that he fought it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and District Attorney Willis beat him, and he had to appear before the grand jury and testify. So now what happens is this is all secret by law. So the special grand jury has issued a report. Fani Willis has it. And there's a court hearing in Georgia. The case is being presided over, or I should say the grand jury matter is being presided over by Judge McBurney, a Georgia state judge. And on January 24th, he's going to hear arguments on whether the grand jury's report should become public or should remain secret while Fani Willis moves on to the next phase of her investigation. Here's what the next phase looks like. She will take the work of the special grand jury and she will present it to the regular grand jury in Georgia. That is the grand jury empowered to indict people. And I have to believe, Brian, if we read the tea leaves, I suspect the special grand jury found evidence of crime. How could they not, given that notorious phone call? Look, just find me 11,780 votes and corruptly declare me the winner. Let me add that
Before he adds, let me add. That played on national television. It's insane. It is insane that it took a state's attorney general to start a case into this. It's insane that it's 2023 and we're just getting real progress on this. I understand investigations take time. The Department of Justice better understand that this dude, this whole case, of which they had 2 years to build and get an indictment, one, the evidence played on national television. Two, it involves elector fraud. It involves trying to undo democracy. And guess what? We had an election after that. 2022. We had an election. The people involved in this would have been affected in their election if indictments had been made. I understand that you cannot use the Justice Department as a way to get rid of political opponents you don't like. But you also can't fail to use it just because you're afraid that somebody who is constantly accusing you of all kinds of wildness will also accuse you of using the Justice Department as a cudgel. In other words, MAGA people are going to say that anybody who isn't, full-on fascist is a rhino or a socialist or whatever. And they'll have no idea what they're talking about. And they know it, and we know it, and on it goes. The fact that we have politicians and attorneys general that are worried about their opinion is insane. Their opinion isn't an honest one. And the real consequences we're suffering is that there are people within our government right now who might get arrested tomorrow because we didn't have the guts to take care of this a year ago, 2 years ago. This is an open and shut case, and that's just with the evidence that played on national television. That is just with what Trump has already admitted to. That is just with what we know. Imagine what we don't know yet. Those transcripts are going to be fascinating. Let's let Glenn Kirshner do his thing. Go on, brother.
Other participant in that call, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger from Georgia, he testified before the special grand jury about that phone call. So if the special grand jury has recommended in its report that criminal charges should be brought against one or more people, I have to believe Fani Willis will go into the regular grand jury, will present that report, will summarize the evidence that was developed before the special grand jury, and she will ask the regular Georgia grand jury to vote out indictments.
Now, we know that special grand jury's report isn't public, but what about the regular grand jury that's been convened? Are we gonna be able to follow along with that publicly?
It will all be done behind closed doors in secret. The only thing we will know is when and if an indictment has been issued and unsealed. That is typically at the moment an arrest is made or a negotiated turn-in is agreed to between the prosecutors and the defense attorneys representing the target. Indeed, if the target ends up being Donald Trump. So the answer is no, unfortunately. We're going to be kept in the dark unless and until an indictment issues.
Is that normal? Like, are all grand jury cases, at least in the state of Georgia, behind closed doors? Isn't this something that usually we're able to follow along with, at least in other states?
Almost all grand juries are secret by law because, and there are really some important policy considerations behind that. If we prosecutors are in the grand jury investigating somebody for potential crime, and it turns out we don't have enough evidence to indict the person, or maybe we got it wrong, the person didn't commit a crime, the last thing you want to do is to have that information out in the public square because, the person who might be wrongfully accused can never get his or her reputation back. We also do it, Brian, to protect the witnesses that we call before the grand jury, because we want them to feel comfortable that they can fully testify about the crimes of others.
Don't forget, just like any, let's get out that dumb face. There we go. Just like with any other criminal organization, Trump's people, the Trump family, hasn't been afraid to intimidate witnesses. As a matter of fact, we had the whole drama with that playing out with Cassidy Hutchinson. I mean, Trump intimidates in a sort of childish, cartoonish way even. But he did that on the phone call with Brad Raffensperger. Remember that he said, what you're doing it could be illegal to not look into it. As in, if I somehow make it through this thing, I'm going to make sure you hurt for not helping me. So he's got a good point about why it's kept secret. I understand that. That said, I am getting impatient, as should you, and extraordinarily grateful to Fani Willis for her incredible efforts. She has been truly one of the heroes of this generation. She is one of the people who has acknowledged finally that America has a corrupt justice system and has actually taken steps to do something about it. It's amazing. I also have to give credit. Dana Nessel, who I had come out against specifically for not doing this. Dana Nessel reopened the investigation into Donald Trump in the state of Michigan, into the fake electors plot in the state of Michigan. There were 7 states where that happened. One of them's Georgia, another one's Michigan. There's 5 more that could have state investigations opened into Trump's interference with the election. Let's get to it. Also recall that if the federal investigation is the only one that is done into the fake elector plot, if it's even done at all, we honestly don't know if they're still doing that. But if it's done at all, it's unlikely they're going to focus or give much weight to a lot of the state level people. Well, the current lieutenant governor of Georgia is one of those state level people. So it does have consequences in your state. Look at that link in the description. See if you're from one of the states that had a fake elector plot. If you are, contact your attorney general. Dana Nessel cited pressure from her constituents. in terms of what was one of the things that made her reopen the case. It does work. It doesn't take that much effort, but it does take some effort. Let's read some comments here. I just want to say hello to all of you. Thank you so much for joining me. Christopher Andrews says content with substance. Man, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Mr. Saxo Keat says, appreciate the content, brother. Keep it up. You know I will. Absolutely. This is incredibly fun. Thank you for joining me on a Saturday night. It's all right for fighting for what you believe in. This has been WYCD Wicked. It's your old pal Jake. We're looking to get to 1,000 subscribers. If you enjoyed today, if you enjoyed previous streams, if you'd like more, consider giving this stream a like and the channel a subscribe. I'd highly appreciate it. We share good progressive content from around the internet, from around the world, and we tell you what you can do. I'll see you next time.